a pitch for the next PlayStation console, man.
The next PlayStation console. It's perfect. You spend $2,000 because the RAM is so expensive, even though it's like 100 gigabytes of storage space that you get to play with. It's gonna come with God of War 4. Oh my god, get excited. And on top of that, it's just gonna be the Frank the Cube. It's just a gelatinous cube and you stick your hands in it and then you imagine the game in your head.
Are you proposing the controller is Frank the Cube,
Yes.
or the console is Frank? Oh,
Both.
okay.
Both, because it through the touch sense, it will communicate to your brain what is happening.
Yeah. Wow.
I don't know if that'll make it in or not, but we'll see. All right. We're starting now. Welcome to the Respawn Station podcast. My name is Nick Sivak, and I'm joined by Sri Kandula.
I appreciate that Nick starts the podcast with the cadence of a teacher that's realizing that he has to start class, and he's like, "Fuck! All right, we're starting now. Let's open your pages."
That's the energy of today.
Yeah. It's been a hell of a news cycle for us to get through, and we're certainly going to get to it. But Nick, we got to take some time to address the host. So how are you doing? How have you been in the last 2 weeks when you've not been talking about video game news? Because nothing's really been happening in video game news. So.
It's been nice. While we haven't specifically recorded for about 2 weeks, like you said, I've gotten a lot of video work done on the back end for stuff going out on the channel here.
Absolutely,
so
yeah.
We got some Nick 64 in the can, getting ready. We got that Dead as Disco video that I mentioned in the Save Slot episode that we recorded. So be on the lookout for those. And just been having fun. I finished God of War Ascension for our Retrograde podcast. And
hell yeah.
Outside of the video work,
I almost said something about how far in I am and stuff, but it would have been a bit of a spoiler, not for the game, but for the discussion that we would have. So I'm gonna keep it tight-lipped. You're gonna have to tune into the Retrograde episode for what I think about Ascension.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I'm the only one who hasn't ascended so far. So soon.
The only unfortunate thing is that outside of playing video games and editing videos, watching the social media sphere around the games industry has felt like absolute dog shit recently. So, which we're going to get into because Xbox is bracing for a massive wiping of the slate by all accounts that are talking about it. Sony announced today that they're done with physical games, so that's fun. And we got plenty of other topics that I'm sure we're gonna tackle along the way. So, how have you been?
This
Sri?
is definitely an oops all headlines type of situation. And you know what? I've been good. I've been playing a good game that I've been having a great time with. But it is interesting because I feel like the game that I'm talking about. Nick knows, you might know as well. It's Fallout 4, but I feel utterly like lost in that game, and lost as in like I'm just like when I'm in it, I'm in the Commonwealth. I'm just kind of like exploring, and it really does feel like for most of my nights, even though literally we didn't record last week, I spent I think 3.5 to 4 hours playing or streaming Fallout 4. And I'm having a great time with the game, but it really does feel like every time I come up for air, which is a crazy thing to say considering it's the wasteland, I'm like it's like shit. It's just everywhere I look, it's just random shit floating around. But I suppose that it's par for course with kind of everything that's been going on. It's perhaps maybe we should have read the tea leaves in terms of certain things that were patented or rumored or leaked that sort of, paved the way for what we're about to talk about today. So with that said, I think first, Nick, we'll kind of talk about some of the smaller pieces, the quicker headlines, and then we'll get into the more meaty stuff, which will pretty much be uh, a majority of this conversation, which is the Xbox and Sony news.
Mhm.
Um, so, first of all, and actually, I'm not even going to talk about the first liner we have here, but look, some good news. All right, there's two pieces of good news that I'll throw out there. One,
Thank
you
God.
know, in a time when it seems that every game gets delayed, some of them are getting prelayed. That's not it. It's essentially Onimusha, Wave the Sword, which was originally scheduled for a September 25th release date, a pre-laid has been pre-laid, and it is now September 4th, 2026. So a little bit more of a cushion between them and the inevitable proverbial gaming nuke that is GTA 6 dropping later. And then, less than a month ago, on June 10th, this game called Mecha Chameleon has hit the Steam storefront, and it really kind of also dropped on my Twitter feed. I don't know if you see it as much as I do, Nick, but I see clips, like random clips of this game just kind of pop up every now and then. And I didn't really know too much about it, but wow. I mean, congratulations to this team. They've sold 10 million copies of the game
Nice.
in 3 weeks, roughly. And it really goes to show that I think that in a time when so often, I think that when you look at the big picture of video games or the AAA kind of market, it's always the indie games that you kind of have to celebrate because, it really is sort of, and not to steal something from Jason Schreier, but it does feel like indie games are those lottery tickets that often cash out, and I don't want to say often, but like, there's hundreds and thousands of games that are being developed. Not all of them are going to be hits, but it just seems the success and the payout for indie games is certainly worth celebrating when everything else seems so live servicey and dour in the rest of
Mhm.
it. That being said, there's one more news that kind of starts off pretty much from here on out, guys. Strap in. This is it's not great news. Um, so Absolem, I believe it came out a few years ago. It's a game with three developers, and I believe the other two developers kind of worked on mechanics and stuff like that. But the team that Supermonks, who worked on specifically the animation for that game, have unfortunately been liquidated. So the studio is shutting down, and it's an unfortunate fact. But again, it's going to be look. The word shutdown or layoffs is going to be prevalent. I implore you not to take a shot every time you hear us say it in this episode because you won't make it to the end. Uh, with that said, Nick, you're talking about it. I'm talking about it. Your grandma might even be talking about it, and that is GTA 6, baby. Everyone's got their claws are clamoring for GTA 6 in just a few months, and as of last week, we had the kind of big pre-order reveal, and I feel like that was really the shoe drop, and I think. In this episode, Nick, there's definitely going to be some conspiracy theorizing that we're going to have to get into at some point.
Mhm.
But that being said, give me some details on this GTA 6 pre-order.
Yeah, so we finally got confirmation of the pricing. That's been, a
Yeah,
huge talking point with people. I'm sure we talked about it at some point, whether on the air or off the air, but the official pricing is there's going to be two versions. There's a standard edition and an ultimate edition. The standard edition is going to be 80 US dollars. The ultimate edition is 100 US dollars. And the standard game is going to be, GTA 6, no fancy bells and whistles. The Ultimate Edition has caused a bit of ire amongst the community because rather than being like some fancy collector's edition or something like that most companies do, this Ultimate Edition for the game is like very strangely kind of chopped up. I'll say. So to kind of cut through to what I'm trying to say here, there's multiple businesses in Grand Theft Auto 6 that will let you do various things from modding cars to getting tattoos and different haircuts and things like that. And some of these businesses are locked behind the Ultimate Edition paywall. So there
Yes.
we don't know exactly how it's going to work in game, but in theory there will be a physical building on the map for this specific mod shop or salon, and in theory you won't be able to enter this building, or maybe you will be able to enter the building but you can't like interface with these specific
Sure.
cosmetics or modifications unless you are enrolled in the Ultimate Edition. They did say that you can purchase an Ultimate Edition upgrade at any time. So, like,
Yeah.
if you get the standard version and you're like, oh, I want to get access to this stuff, then you are able to upgrade after the fact, which is,
Yeah.
I guess, nice. It's, the bare minimum of what to offer with that. But there's actually a surprising amount of this stuff in the rundown. So there's like at least 2 different car modification shops, one for like regular mods, the other for off-road mods. There's an exclusive tattoo shop that has, tattoos designed by real tattoo artists. That is exclusive.
And I think to clarify the point, just because I feel like there's some confusion about it, I still think this is a crazy fucking scheme. But it's not like you're not being locked out of every tattoo artist or every
Correct.
mod shop. It's specific ones. So you can still go to other tattoo shops and give your character tattoos or modify your cars in any of the other shops in the game. It's just these specific, presumably luxury ones that are, being blocked out.
Yeah, there's a set of like missions where you go and collect these abandoned cars that kind of people are suggesting it's sort of like Forza Horizon barn finds. That is
Sure.
in the Ultimate Edition. There's an exclusive gang raid like compound mission that seemingly there's going to be other spots on the map that you'll be able to do stuff like this, which Red Dead 2 kind of had like some elements of that in its game. In addition to a number of different cars, weapon skins, exclusive outfits, hairstyles. It's like a huge list of stuff, and you can read it 2 ways, I think. One, you can be like, wow, freaking Rockstar just completely, cutting out parts of hard-earned content and only giving it to the whales. Or you can read it as like, wow, this game probably has a shit ton of this stuff in it, that this amount of things they're carving out hopefully won't feel like even that consequential in the grand scheme of things.
Sorry, Nick. I was just looking up how much GTA 6 is going for on eBay.
Oh, God. I can only imagine.
Because this is a interesting point that was kind of being thrown out there regarding like we're gonna get into this, but the idea that like if you don't have a physical disc to sell, who's gonna buy it? Well, apparently you can buy the pre-orders for GTA 6 for like $130. So the market is there. The market is somehow there.
People
I've no
of the
idea.
internet, please look at me in the eyes and tell me, why are you buying a pre-order on eBay? They can't run out. It's a digital pre-order. Like you can just pay the normal price. Like
to the credit of I guess no one's credit. I don't want to give scalpers any credit. It is somehow selling out of the digital versions. I don't really know how. It did say out of stock for a bit, but now they're back.
Maybe they just
they're kind
ran
of
out of generated keys and need to hit the button a couple more times.
We've ran out of letters and numbers combinations. No. Yeah, it's this is a whole very interesting space for the game, because obviously this game is so huge. but I think the words have really muddled, like the announcements of everything has really muddled the kind of launch that I think everyone was expecting, which is like everyone loves GTA 6. It just adds a little bit more of kind of tension there in terms of, okay, but like who's actually going to buy it? And at first, there was a support page on the Rockstar website that said that you could buy physical discs version of the game at a later date. That has since been removed. So it was, I was under the assumption when I saw it that essentially, I think, and we had discussed this offline, Nick, but it was sort of like the idea that this initial first wave is so that people don't leak discs. Like that's so common that
We
people just
should
grab discs and
emphasize, because
oh
we haven't, that the other big part of this outside of the price is that
oh
the
shit yeah,
game
probably
is
should have
a code in the box. It is not going to be printed on a disc, which we will circle back around to, because that is going to be a through line through this episode. But
yes
yes, you can buy a physical case. There's no confirmation of this, but if they're doing the case, and Rockstar usually does this, they'll probably throw in like a physical map of some sort. Hopefully.
yeah.
And then outside of that, it will be a download code in the box. And as we were about to get into and everything, there's a whole number of different avenues and reasons as to why that is. But it did kind of come as a shock, I think, to a lot of people. I'm from my perspective, like I understand why this game specifically did this, but it still was kind of like a shock, like, oh, they're not printing discs. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah. Honestly, the $80 and the $100 thing didn't actually surprise me that much because it
No.
essentially feels like it's $100. You're paying $100 if you want the full game. It's just that they're like offering you a little $20 discount to experiment with the game if you're like still unconvinced or something like that.
I'm actually surprised that the $100 one isn't more expensive. Like I thought it was going to be like 120. So that was a little bit of a surprise.
But yes, now that Nick has set the stage, because I've realized I was getting ahead of myself, that there is no disc, and so the reason for this was the Nick and I were discussing that it might be because they're trying to avoid the leaks that happen often when disc games come out. There's employees at shops or just people who have connections that end up getting or you know what? Sometimes like Walmart or whatever will deliver discs early just for no help, like no reason, and that means that there's leaks that kind of hit the internet. What you do when you have a digital code is that you can install the game, you can read the code and install the game, but the game doesn't go live until, someone, presumably with a twirly mustache at Rockstar headquarters, presses the big red button saying that the game can go live. So I can understand the thesis of that, but then my I was fully on board with the logic that okay, then you wait a few months, maybe like when the January of 2027, or maybe when like the PC version launches, there'll be a physical version of the game to come out with it. But that has since been expunged from the website. So as of now, there is no physical edition of GTA 6 that will hit store shelves, as far as we know.
Which is a shame.
And this,
like,
absolutely, yeah. And this really is the segue for the rest of the episode. So go ahead.
Yeah, like, for something, it puts the last week into like a really weird context, right? Because before the pre-orders went live, they had this small little trailer of the cover art reveal, or I guess the key art reveal, and it is classic GTA cover art, the graphic novel sort of panels with all the nice artwork and stuff, and it's like I was reflecting on that, being like, yeah, GTA, like it's kind of been consistent throughout the year. They have throughout the years they have these design elements, and they always feel like they put together a really nice package when you buy a game, right? And then this news comes out that it's not going to be a disc, so it's literally just going to be the empty box. Which again, for a weirdo like me that buys stuff like this, like I'm okay with that. Obviously, I would prefer to have the game on the disc, right? Because that's why you buy physical video games. But like, I do kind of buy into the leaks situation because people probably would break into warehouses if they knew that a shipment of GTA 6 games was in there to do nefarious things. But the like with today's news that Sony has announced that they will be ending physical game production for PlayStation games starting in 2028. It's like, oh no, this is the last time that we are getting that. Like, that's not going to happen again, realistically, unless, regulators or the backlash of the community is so fierce that it has such a dramatic impact on their bottom line that they are just like, oh, we're sorry, we're printing discs again. But it's like, that's just a weird feeling. That it's like, this thing that's been consistent throughout the last 2 decades of, not just GTA, but we'll use GTA in this example. GTA 6 is the last one. Like, that is not a sensation that's going to be kept carried forward.
Yeah. And okay, so you've blown the lid on the cover, right? So PlayStation is ending physical disc production in January of 2028. We can get a few things from this, but again, I'm gonna keep flipping back between the conspiracy tinfoil hat and my regular bald head. And so the tinfoil hat version of this, from the way I read this, is right like the series of events. I feel like Sony was ready to do this for a bit.
Mm-hmm.
You also have to understand that Sony's been ahead of the curve for a while, so far ahead that what is it 2011 they released a PlayStation Portable Go, which was essentially an all digital device at a time when it made no sense to have an all digital device. So I'm just setting the stage with that, right? Like that is who we're talking about here. And I'm not saying that the same people in charge at Sony or then are still in charge now, but it is part of like I think the what Sony does. It's part of their brand DNA, I suppose. But I feel like Sony's been ready to do this, and the results of I think they were waiting with bated breath for what GTA 6's reaction and the actual like reality of it will be, because obviously you go online and you'll find dozens, hundreds of videos and tweets and articles and posts of people saying, oh my God, this is the end of the world as we know it. But at the same time, you look on the storefront and GTA 6 is selling like hotcakes. And you know for a fact that GTA 6, regardless of if they could say, hey, GTA 6 got a code in the box and a hot fucking piece of poop, and people, it would still be the best selling entertainment piece of media of all time, movies, albums, whatever.
That's the thing where it's like people were so curious about the price of GTA 6, not necessarily because of the price of the game, which is going to sound weird to say. Like, they realistically, like you said, they could have put whatever price tag on it and people would buy it. The people were interested in the price because of what it means for everybody else. And like what publishers would take that information and be like, oh, they're charging 80? Whoa, we get to charge 80 for our games now. I just didn't think that most people were thinking Sony would look at that and be like, we're done making games. Like, we're done printing discs because GTA did it, so now we can do it. And it's like, that's
and it all
crazy.
And it all happens so fast, because even when Nintendo started doing the $80 as a normal point and everyone was like, yeah, $80, yeah, that works. It's crazy how fast that became the norm. Like for a little bit people were like, whoa, $60, $70, but like, or I guess $70 is the Nintendo's price point, but like it's that $10 jump only makes the $20 jump like less jarring, because now you're like, oh, it's only $10 more than what I pay now instead of $20 more than the typical $60 hardware price.
Mm.
But that being said, um, and by the way, and like Sony's probably also looking at the general kind of stats about how GTA 6 is, from everything I've seen, the Ultimate Edition of that game is actually selling like really well, even compared to the regular version. So like more people are tended to go pay the extra $20 and go $100 to get the full experience. It
Oh,
seems.
kids are gonna be bullied in school. They're gonna be like, "Oh, you don't have
If they don't
access to the
have
mod shop, bro? Like, pay up, loser!"
you
Like,
can't get this tattoo. What do you do? Oh, dude, you're a fucking loser. And so looking at all this thing, it probably, if not gave him confidence, it at least expedited the process. If or actually, sorry, if it didn't expedite the process, it at least gave them confidence in announcing it literally like a week after the GTA 6 pre-orders went up.
yeah.
But there is a lot to dig into. So Nick, where do you want to go into this discussion with?
Uh, I'll start with my general thoughts, and we can nail down a bit further. The base level, it's just bad. Like, I don't come on here all that often and just be like, this is a stupid decision, but like specifically for Sony, right? Like, we're kind of used to bad news with Xbox right now, and I'm not saying that this would have went better if Xbox said it, but
We're still going to Xbox soon. Yeah,
yeah,
Xbox still has their time.
they're not free from this conversation either. But like Sony specifically, like, we've just a couple months ago we talked about that weird scare with the DRM thing, where it was like people were
Yeah, yeah.
discovering that, like, games, if they weren't checked in on the internet for a certain amount of time, it could just revoke a license that you already purchased and stuff. Then, sidestepping that, you also have another announcement and blog post that they put out today where they are officially closing the PS3 and Vita stores, which, to
Yeah,
be
yeah.
to be fair, when they tried to do this a couple years ago and everybody kicked up a stink, they did allow it to live on for another 5-6 years or whatever. I think that's more than most people were expecting. At the same time, it's a really weird situation to find yourself in where you're saying, hey, we're going to go digital only. By the way, we're closing a digital store. Like, what? Like,
It's not even just that is a crazy mixed signals and stuff like that. I agree. What's also worrying about this, and I do think that it is a yes, like I'm Nick, close your eyes. Let me paint the picture of what the next generation console is going to be, right?
I already hate
You
it.
you pay you pay at least $1,000 for a console that does not have a disk drive, regardless of what console you're getting, by the way. And then you have to pay $80 to $100 per game. Everything on that console is loaned, not owned. Even if you pay $80 and download the game, it is not yours. It's just for the namesake. You have it. It shows up in your little thing, but it's not yours. And there's no physical backwards compatibility because again, the thing has no there's no disk drive. Now, you can open your eyes now. That reality has a different side to it as well. You could definitely say, oh, look, video games are going to be more accessible now than ever. There's this idea that, you buy a game once and you can own it across multiple systems. There's been rumors about Sony heading back into the portable market with the success of the Switch and rumors of like a PlayStation portable kind of cropping up here and there. There's kind of ideas that you can see being laid out before you that are perhaps interesting and alluring, even if you're not really thinking about the long-term implications of having no discs or whatever. But that being said, there's so many weird writings on the wall. There's really weird implications of just what this means for you as a gamer, but also as like a person who works hard to earn your money and what that money goes to. So, first of all, just recently, Sony announced that they sent out an email to users who were impacted. But essentially, over 500 movies will be removed from PlayStation accounts in September because of licensing issues. And obviously, like that's the licensing issues is like a whole different discussion. But at the same time, that's over 500 movies that someone people have paid for that they can no longer watch, even though they spent their money on that item, you know?
And I on my drive home today, I was listening to a video from Mr. Matty Plays, who
Mm.
uploaded a video a lot about a lot of these topics, and that also came up. And he made a point that like I never really consider, but it makes a lot of sense when you hear somebody say it out loud. And it's like, well, I wish those people that bought those movies knew about that licensing arrangement when they spent the money. It's like they just kind of come out of nowhere and they're like, yeah, so this deal expired, so you're losing access to your stuff. It's like, what? Like, I feel like stuff like
Yeah.
this going forward, if this is the future that they want to create for themselves, then things actually do need to change. And if they are offering something like a movie from a specific company or a game from a third party, if they have a licensing arrangement that's for a set amount of time, then that needs to be like clearly displayed at the time of purchasing that bit of software or that movie or whatever. It's this kind of weird, behind closed doors stuff that I think is starting to just rub people the wrong way anytime anything like this happens, where it's just like, okay, well, we didn't do anything to impact that deal, so why are we being punished for it in a backwards way? It's just weird how people keep having to brunt all of the issues with these like arrangements and agreements, and seemingly, Sony doesn't have any there's no recourse against Sony. You can't be like, I opt out of this, I don't want you to take my stuff. Like it's just
Yeah. I mean, Amazon's done a similar thing too. So it's not like Sony is exclusive in this kind of removal of media from people's libraries. But yeah, it is a weird argument that, or a weird deal that you make with the person you're buying it from. And again, there's a different understanding if I know I'm renting something and I know after 24 or 48 hours I'm gonna lose access to it versus this is a thing that I've bought and it is removed from my access. Of course, Nick might be wondering, but why? Well, the answer is quite simple, my friends. Money, 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 money. Okay, so let's dig into this a little bit, right? So, first of all, at a base level, not having discs means that Sony will have full control over first party titles and their pricing. What I mean by that is if you go on your storefront of choice, Amazon, Walmart, Best Buy, whatever, chances are in the last week, even I'll say, that a lot of the big first party games, God of War Ragnarok, Gran Turismo, Last of Us, these all went on sale probably for like 30, $40, right? You go on the PlayStation Store right now, those games, 60 flat. No change, no real sale. Maybe if you have a PlayStation Plus membership, you got a little bit of discount off of them. One of them maybe in the rotation for the PlayStation Plus,
yeah, you get a
games of the
discount
month.
for going at the company store with your script.
Yeah, yeah. So that means that essentially it helps Sony get a monopoly over their games in the market. That's a base starting, right? On top of that, there's like the logistics of okay, you don't have to produce discs, and so there's this like this just general production costs are going down, which in the current market of video games, that's a fair point to consider. It's games are really expensive, and we've come to a point where games are costing four, three, four, $500 million to produce, which is at this point over the budget of a lot of Hollywood blockbusters. And I do think that look, there's a bunch of Jason Schreier videos that you can gladly go binge. He'll share more detailed, um, information about that stuff, and he'll also kind of mention like, oh yeah, by the way, I was just texting this guy who's also makes video games. He's pretty cool. But one thing that Jason Schreier and we both have in common, we both plug the fact that we have an article that you can click the link in the description below to go read, because this episode is brought to you by respawnstation.com. But I digress. Video games are very expensive, and so this is one more thing to sort of, cut down on the pricing of how much it takes to produce a video game.
See,
Now,
now you know what would be an interesting piece of the puzzle that Sony could have done but
yeah,
won't. If really the cost of producing discs was such an impact on this decision, how about you pass on the savings that you're now getting from not producing that to the to the people, right? Can you knock an
yeah,
extra $5 to $10
sure.
off the sticker price on the digital store for those games? I doubt it. I doubt that God of War Ragnarok is still going to say $70 and Gran Turismo is still going to be $70.
Yeah. Now, there is this interesting thing. I like. I don't know why I randomly thought of it, but essentially, a few months ago, I don't know if you saw this, Nick, but and I don't even. Yeah, I think it was when we were offline, so we wouldn't have even mentioned it on the podcast. But a few months ago, there was this rumor that Sony was working on essentially personalized pricing. I think they had either a patent for it or something like that. But essentially, the idea is that the pricing for a given game will change based on when you go up to the PlayStation store, based on a person's like a given criteria. So I don't know the examples. Again, it's been a few months. I don't know the examples off the top of my head, so I'm going to make up some on my own. But imagine that Nick is, just a diehard fucking, I don't know, Hi-Fi Rush fan, right? You have to really imagine this. He's not really. He hates it, but he platinumed the game, and Hi-Fi Rush 2 comes out. The store can essentially look at Nick and say, "Oh, he has the platinum. He's probably going to be more tempted to maybe if it's like $10 off, he'll probably just bite the bullet and go for it anyway. He'd probably buy it. Vice versa, you might look at your stats and say Nick is a big digital baller. He's constantly buying digital games on the storefront. So that means we don't have to show him these sales. We can give him full price, and he's going to pay, because we know that he's going to pay that $60 or $70 without thinking about it. And so he gets that full price.
Which is
And
so
so all these
weird
kind
to
of
me. Like that, I've heard that excuse
is.
used and that example used in talking about this dynamic pricing system. And it's like, wouldn't, from the company's point of view, wouldn't you want to reward the customer that is routinely coming back and buying a lot of that stuff? But instead, it's like this weird, again, reverse punishment where it's just like, oh, we know we don't have to treat these people special. They'll just give us their money. And it's like, it's so weird.
I think it's sort of like it's sort of like how a lot of live service and free to play games. I think it's that mentality of, by and large, a lot of them, they're not, it's not just a player count that they're going for, right? Like the free to play game wants the big player count, but really they're looking for the whales. No fucking pun intended. Oh shit! I didn't even make that up. I didn't even make that up. But they're looking for the whales, which are is a term for people who are high spenders in the game, right? They'll just like buy battle pass, buy cosmetics, and they are the ones that fund the game and keep it going. So I think it's that sort of mentality that is sort of, oh yeah, we know that these people will show up and they're willing to pay. And so we kind of milk them for what they got. It is a little bit backwards when you think about it from like a just like a human perspective, but when you're thinking about it from the 100 floor up corporate mindset, it's prime milking season. All right. Now, there's further kind of developments on top of this regarding kind of the just the way that the like personally, Nick, look, we're going through a terrible time in the tech industry. nearly everything, every single console and piece of hardware has gone up in price. I mean, Apple has just announced that all of their lineup of phones, tablets, and computers are going up in price because of the RAM shortages. Uh, the Xbox Series S, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to listen to me very carefully, all right? The Xbox Series S with 512 gigs of memory is now the same price as the Xbox Series X when it launched 6 years ago. How does that make any sense? How it baffles me that this is what. And with that in mind, in a market that is seemingly struggling to find storage prices or just storage, and the prices keep increasing, Sony's like, you know what? Those things that have storage on the disc that have the games on it, we're gonna get rid of that stuff. Let's just get it all on platform.
Yeah, I it's it's a convolution of a lot of elements as we're talking about here, right? I think Sony, if this announcement was planned months ago, colossally bad timing on that. Like, you couldn't
Right?
have
Yeah.
picked a worse time to try to suggest
I'm sure. Yeah.
getting rid of
I'm sure there was some
discs.
draft of this the bot blog post that went up floating around months ago. But yeah, it's definitely ill timing, all things considered.
And the thing that sucks is, like, if you want to take all of the shittiness of, no discs and all that out of it and think just about next gen, think about the PlayStation 6. It's like, if Valve is out here putting out a Steam machine with 500 gigs of storage slash whatever for over $1,000, like, PlayStation
Yeah.
clearly is not going to be able to do much better, or, like, they could certainly
Yeah.
do worse, but they're not going to be able to do much better if what the tech industry people are suggesting, which is that the RAM is likely going to double, like, even again
Again.
multiple
Yeah.
times. And so it's like, when this is coming out
The,
around 2028, are we looking at a $1,500 PlayStation 6 that has like 200 gigs of RAM? Like, what's the plan here?
there is some frame of reference to mention because look, I was so on board for the Steam machine thing. In fact, you can go back to previous episodes of this show and you can hear me talk about how excited I am about, oh man, I'm going to get the Steam machine. A lot has happened and changed since then. I know that I saw the rising prices and I ended up buying a PC beforehand anyway, but even then, even if I didn't have this PC and that thing turned out to be $1,000 for a 512 gig or whatever it is memory, like I probably wouldn't have bought that anyway.
You
That
could
being
see me
said,
talk about how I'd be interested if it was $500.
different times, man, different times. But the I think the key distinction though is that I think Steam and Valve, I should say, doesn't really want to sell their hardware at a loss. Whereas it's pretty much like written into like Sony's memorandum about how, like, yeah, we will sell our consoles at a loss because we're hoping that we can make up for it in sales. Like, that's part of their key strategy since at least the PlayStation 4, but it could be even longer than that. So that is like a distinction point. Like, I could see the argument again. This is still crazy, but like I could see the argument that like Sony would probably go, "Oh, we'll go 800 on this, for this new console, and we'll bite the $100-$200 kind of upfront cost." Whereas Valve kind of just, hey, here's how much it costs plus a little, pocket money for us, and then we'll send you a box. So that being said, there are a few things we can glean from this sort of news announcement, right? First of all, I think it's pretty safe to say that the next PlayStation will launch somewhere around 2028 because it would line up that if they're stopping physical disc production, that it would be somewhere around the time that the next console will launch. Also, if they're saying in January of 2028 that they will not produce discs, it's also fair to assume that the console will not have a disk drive because why the hell would you need it? And again, production costs and everything, you save money on the producing the disk drive. And I know that they've have like even the PS5 generation, they have the portable, like, or not the portable, but the removable disk drives for like, what is it, $70? I think you can get like that disk drive or something like that. I've never owned a digital console like that. I did have a Series S for a little bit, but most of the time I'm using a console with a disk drive, so I'm not really
Mm.
sure what the variation is. But those are the kind of easy things to glean from
Well,
it, right?
you also mentioned it earlier, kind of offhandedly, but if it doesn't have a disk drive, it's probably not backwards compatible. Like, unless you have a
Yeah,
digital
yeah,
game. But, like, at that point, is it really considered backwards compatible anyway? Like, I don't know. It seems like with PS4 generation, they kind of did make a concerted effort when trying to make the consoles more PC like, that the games would be more translatable to future hardware. We're not having like
yeah,
a PS3 situation with the cell processor that's like apparently impossible to emulate properly. So it's like
yeah, yeah.
it's there's that angle to it, but also like I'm just so curious what the plan is for PlayStation 6 because on paper with what we're talking about, no disk drive, that's a huge thing, for a lot of people, myself included. The price is going to be astronomical. If the storage has to be limited because of availability and scarcity, what are we doing? What are the positives or the pros of this at this point? Because if it's just an $800 machine to play The Last of Us 3 and God of War 4, sorry, I'm not interested. Like what is the purpose here? I saw some speculation. I forget. Maybe it was like Mystic Ryan I was watching or somebody, but like they were mentioning that it's like, okay, maybe Sony is trying to work on some tech to try to get the install size of games down. And it's like instead of having Call of Duty be 200 gigabytes on a hard drive, if the PlayStation 6's hard drive is going to be like a 512 gig SSD because that's all that they can get, you really can't get away with games being that big. So it's like, is that going to be the next kind of push forward? Because in PS5, it was a lot about frame rates and getting those increased over the previous generations and stuff. That
Which
would be one cool thing,
we've still
but
not really hit. By the way, like there's really not been a consistency in game performance, and from what we've seen so far and heard so far, it seems that even GTA 6 will play at 30 frames per second on
do not
PlayStation 5
expect
and
any
Xbox Series
higher
X.
on console. They have never gone for 60
They
FPS
have
unless it's a later console.
they have said that it is that the game will run best on PlayStation 5 Pro, which somehow,
Hmm.
after everything that's been shifting around, the the people that actually bought the PS5 Pros, a few years ago, kind of made it out, pretty well because they spent the price of now a regular Xbox Series X uh, to have essentially the most powerful console that either company I think is really producing at this point, right? Uh,
Yeah,
but that
I
being
don't
said,
know.
it's time to turn the discussion from blue to green because Xbox has their own set of implications off of this, and it segues into a whole bunch of other shit that that they've been announcing or kind of leaking over the last 2 weeks or so. But the first thing is also about this whole disc debacle. Oh, disc debacle.
There's your
So,
episode name.
Windows Central has reported that the next Xbox, the Project Helix, will also likely not have a disk drive. Now, an interesting wrinkle on top of this. This is from The Verge. Tom Warren at The Verge. He says, and I'm gonna read the first a little bit here. But check it out again. Tom Ward says, quote, Microsoft will likely soon follow Sony and stop the production of physical discs for Xbox games. But instead of leaving physical discs behind entirely, sources familiar with Microsoft's plan tell me that the company has quietly been working on a disc to digital feature that will allow Xbox owners to digitize their existing physical game collection. Xbox employees recently shared testing this new feature after references to, quote, enable disc to digital appeared in the Xbox PC app code in May. I'm told that the Microsoft disc, struggling to speak apparently, Microsoft's disc to digital feature will work on the Xbox One and Xbox Series X discs. Fucking shit. Oh my God.
There's a lot of S's in
It
there.
will work. It will work on Xbox One and Xbox Series S dick. Fucking shit. Dicks. It'll work on dicks only. All right. And not those for the original Xbox 360 or the original Xbox. There you go. That's all. That's all we need to know. He does go on to say getting a digital copy of the game works simply by inserting a compatible disc and installing the game, playing the game. Does require a PlayStation account, Microsoft account on an Xbox console will grant digital entitlement for physical games. I'm not going to go into it again. You can go to The Verge and read more about it. But that is interesting. I've long since been wondering, how does this change happen? What is the consumer friendly, so to say, version of this, and how does it play out? I still don't know, and this is kind of still early kind of whisperings. We don't technically know what's going on with Xbox regarding their disc to digital, but I mean, it's cool. But again, I feel like I'm losing out on a lot of the, like, genuinely, I find that as someone who has an Xbox Series X, I tend to buy more retro games like 360 or original Xbox games because I know that they're playable on the Series X and they're backwards compatible.
Mm-hmm.
And I losing out on that security is a little bit of a bummer, you know. Obviously, I'm going to still have my X, but I think at this point, all this is to say that it sort of launches the next generation of consoles on the back foot. You know, they really have to sell this thing to us in order to get us excited about it. Because from our point of view, there's really not a lot that makes sense about why one would upgrade. Especially if you have a PC, you have a lot of the games already.
And people already in this generation are bitching about diminishing returns. So at this point, you can't come out with PlayStation 6 and Series X and talk about the visual fidelity of games because people are sick of it at this point. It's like they look the same, they look like PS4 games. Yeah, if you are a pixel hound and you look at the screen, like, yes, you can see the differences. But by and large, it's not going from PS2 to PS3 or from going from Super Nintendo to N64. We don't get those kind of tech leaps. So they have to start looking for other ways to do exactly what you mentioned, to actually sell it, because the historical things that they've used to sell these consoles are not going to be working with all of this other bad shit that we're talking about constantly. It's exactly like you said. They're going to start on the bad foot, and it's going to be a really hard thing to sell. I mean, I think the disc to digital pipeline, whatever that ends up being, I think that is an interesting element or service to offer, however you want to describe it. But that can't be the only thing, right? There needs to be multiple changes to the digital end of the business and how users interact with digital games for it to start becoming more worthwhile. You know, I think we talked about it on an episode a while ago about how if we do want to go to an all digital future with the game, which all digital future sounds like it's 2 years away at this point, one thing that they should be doing is allowing people to sell the license that they buy. Like, if you are locked into a purchase and then they get to take that away and you can't interact with that in any way, I feel like that's just such a... it's just shitty. Like I don't really know how to describe it other than that. It's like you need to start giving people more freedom to interact with these licenses if that's the only way that they are going to be able to play these. I mean, with the disc to digital one, I read a little bit about it, so I'm not like don't quote me on it if this is wrong or whatever, but it seemed like they were also experimenting with a way that you can like if you have your physical game that's been digitized, if I were to give that to you and you put it in your Xbox, then the digital license would transfer to your Xbox because it's tied to the
Mm,
disc. So it's like
sure.
that's interesting in a way that it's like, okay, so you still have a bit of that, like, I bought the game, I have the license, and now I'm sending it over to you, and it's like, saying like, hey Nick, can I borrow a Halo Master Chief Collection, and I hand you an Xbox game, right? So like the more that they can get the digital infrastructure to at least replicate what we've been able to do for decades with physical games, I think you would get people that are a lot more understanding of the transition and the process. But it seems like every time something like this comes out, it's just like, yeah, we're taking away the functionality, get used to it. And it's like nobody is going to be excited or want to do that. Like you kind of got to meet in the middle here a little bit.
Yeah. Now, again, things look and sound grim, and that's because they are. The consoles. So, for example, console hardware sales in the United States, which is where we're based out of, so that's kind of what we're referred to. But you can kind of extrapolate that to the kind of wider market. But console hardware sales have been the lowest in a long time. I mean, obviously, Xbox is having their own spiraling issue, but even PlayStation isn't selling as much as they might have expected or anticipated. And so this has, I think, resulted in a lot of kind of shifting plates as they anticipate what to do. Last week, we also got news that Sony has kind of issued mass layoffs across Bungie. A lot of the team that worked on Destiny 2 seemingly is no longer with the company, as well as some of the team that worked on Marathon. And yeah, it's just it really is a shit show. And I'm not trying to quote myself on this, but I had this thing when was this? It was published in May of 2025. It was an article I wrote called "The $80 Era." I recommend checking it out. But there's one part that I'll quote it out in the section that's called "It's Not Yours." It's a good title. And it says, quote, let's take a brief detour to talk about Ubisoft here. In 2024, Ubisoft shut down the servers of The Crew, citing server infrastructure and licensing constraints. For an online-only game, this means that the game was no longer playable, even if you bought it outright. This led to a lawsuit in California where just last month, as of when this was written, Ubisoft reiterated that you don't own your games. In the case of The Crew, Ubisoft lawyers claimed that when you buy a game, you're getting a limited access license only. And this isn't just a Ubisoft issue, it's a trend. More publishers are publishing digital storefronts and subscriptions, meaning players pay for access, not ownership. If you're looking for a log line on this write up, then it's this: video game publishers have stopped caring about the gamers, if they ever did. Unquote. I think back to that particular article mainly because there's a lot of, I think, what we're about to say here applies there. It talks about like the overpricing of consoles, which is crazy because I'm now looking at it and it says the regular 1 terabyte Xbox Series X, which was $500 at launch, will now be $600, and the Xbox Series S, which will go from $300 to $380. Buddy, that's $500 now. That's crazy. But and it also goes into like the indie games and all that stuff. I again recommend reading it, but it is this problem has been building up for a while, and I think for a lot of people, even on our Discord, there was conversations about this earlier today. I think there's some misunderstanding of the implications of what this means, right? I do think there is good to having a digital access to games. By and large, I think most people do prefer digital because of the ease of access. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of people who one care about the money that they're spending on video games, and two, the 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 ownership or like the ability to experience art. I don't want to say the ownership of art necessarily, but the example that I shared on Discord earlier today, right, was you play a game. I'll say you play a game on Game Pass or something, and you're really into it. Like you're like, wow, this is awesome. I loved it. And then 2 years from now, you're like, man, I really like that game. I kind of want to replay it. It's gone from licensing. What do you do? Like, you have to buy it again, if that's the case. And then so sure, if you like the game enough, then sure, you buy it again. But then what happens if the servers go down or the licensing issues cause the game to go down off of the storefront, and all of a sudden the game that you paid or rented or whatever is gone, and that piece of art is no longer in accessible, or whatever. It also, I think, Nick, we're not going to get into this topic, but it does also lend into the conversation that a lot of people are bringing up, and I think it's just for the sake of voicing, I'll say it here. But if it's the idea that if buying is not owning, then piracy isn't stealing. Again, that's a whole other can of worms for another day. Not that, like, you can see the wall of games behind Nick, right? We're not saying go pirate your video games, but it might be that by the next gen consoles time, that's the only way you'll own. You got to burn your own Blu-rays if you want to own some of these games, outright. It seems.
Yeah, again, it's like that is a mentality that I've seen being expressed online a lot. Is the if buying isn't owning, then piracy isn't stealing. If you want to sell people on PlayStation 6 and Series X or Series X and Helix, if you want to sell people on these consoles and you want to do all this stuff, you need to offer a more compelling argument than that. And I think that is going to be a challenge for these companies, because everything for the last couple years that we've just talked about has been kind of leading to this point where it's like, okay, we're ripping the Band-Aid off. Like, this is what we envision is going to be the best for our company going forward. And if the gamers don't like it, then too bad. They're going to have to pay for it. And it's like, okay, because, if I'm being honest, from my perspective, based on the stuff that we've been talking about and what they're talking about, it's like, at this point, I don't have any reason to buy a PlayStation 6. I've had a PS4, I've had a PS5, and if we're dropping the physical games, if I only have, my only option is to buy through PlayStation Store, then my decision is made and I'm just not going to buy it. So how does that factor into these, the marketing sheets at the end of the day? Like, have they factored in how much business that they'll lose? Like, I'm sure that's not really an easily quantifiable thing, because, I can sit on my, podium here and suggest how, I'm not going to buy a PlayStation 6, and then all the pre-orders will sell out immediately when they announce it, right? So it's...
Yeah. I also think that's bullshit too, though. I'll let you finish, but like the whole like, oh, the pre-orders have been selling out. Yes, because scalpers keep sending their fucking bots out to scoop them all up. It doesn't really say anything about the success of the console. Anyway, I digress. You go ahead.
And that's the thing where it's like, if we're talking about going to an all digital future where Project Helix is all digital, PlayStation 6 is all digital, then for the last 2 decades, Steam has proven that they're better than both, and they're more fully featured. So it's like, why wouldn't I just go with a PC and go on Steam? Like,
and by and large, even if you're not a PC gamer, the odds that you already have Steam games that you've picked up during sales and the library to build off of encourages people to honestly probably get the Steam machine, or just get a PC, depending on how the market is in, a year from now, or a year and a half, 2 years from now, versus getting one of these consoles, right? I don't know if you saw this, Snake, but there's this discussion going around that like the next PlayStation isn't just going to be a gaming thing. It's going to go outside of the living room. I think something around those words were thrown out there. Going outside the living room. I think this can imply the what I was saying earlier about like a potential PlayStation Portable sort of console. Um, but at the same time, I mean, look, a cool. I would be really into a PlayStation Portable machine, but like realistically, what's the yeah like what is the value proposition? And I suppose we're nearing the end of the conversation here. So Nick, I'll throw it to you. Realistically, what would the next PlayStation 5 need? Sorry, what would the next PlayStation need to have? The PlayStation 6, presumably, to convince you to pick up the console after everything we've said that it's not really on your radar at this point. It's not really hasn't caught your interest. What is something that you think would catch your interest, other than the rumors, just being that it's sort of like a Switch style PlayStation?
Um, there would need to be like dramatic back end technical improvements. Essentially, I what I brought up earlier from whatever video I was watching about getting file sizes down to games. I think if they could be like PlayStation 6 GTA 6 on PS5, it's a 200 gigabyte game, and if you install it on PlayStation 6 because of our new PlayStation Super package packer, we're getting it down to 30 gigabytes. So now you can have, more games installed on less space. I think that would be certainly a great addition on the tech back end because, going into PS5, everybody was just like, oh, we need better frame rates, right? And to their credit, they did kind of prioritize that. And now, marketing 60 FPS games, performance modes, things like that never really happened in previous generations, right? So I think something like that would be really interesting. And then, sort of what we've been describing, there needs to be dramatic changes to how you interface with a digital game. If it works how it works today, that's not enough for me. Like, I'm sorry. Like, you need to give us more access, more ability to transfer, to share licenses, to sell back licenses. Like, I don't even know like how that would necessarily work because, realistically how it would work is you would sell your license back to PlayStation and they would give you, I would assume, a partial credit. Like, obviously you wouldn't be able to get a full credit for your games or whatever, but
Right.
I think having basic functions, and I say basic, having no coding background or business acumen to suggest how basic that would be. But from my consumer perspective, if I'm paying you for a license, I should be able to sell that license back if I don't want to play the game anymore. Like, I think it needs like dramatic changes to make it worth something that I would even pay attention to. Because at this point, like I kind of said, I have 3, 4, 5 years worth of games on older consoles I could be playing. If they just decided, we're only doing digital stuff now, like I could literally pass the console and probably still have plenty of stuff to play for an entire generation.
Yeah.
So
I think that is an exciting part of it, right? Is that I think there's going to be a huge wave of quote unquote patient gamers who are just going to go back instead of going forward. Who will go back to games that are like really beloved. That
we're even starting with retrograde. That's what that entire show is just like us going back and playing older stuff that's not in the public eye. So it's I would say we're not alone in that. I feel like that people have reported on trends of more people going back to older games, and it's just like
yeah.
To
answer my own question, if there was something that would sell me, my harebrained, tinfoil hat answer is, Nick, they say they're stopping physical disc production in January 2028. What if it's a cartridge? Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Leave it to
You didn't
Sony to
think of
keep
that, did you?
copying
You didn't.
Nintendo, going
You
back to
didn't think of that, did you?
cartridges.
You didn't think of that. I would be tempted by cartridges, but really, I think the real answer is the games. Look, Sony has said that they don't want to put first party games that aren't live service games mainly on PC anymore. They've kind of walked that back. Similar, same time that Xbox has kind of walked their kind of conversation back on, no exclusives or whatever, right? But that's really like if there's solid games and there's enough of them that stack up, I could be convinced to go to the next console. But again, by and large, the this console generation has been relatively unmotivating in terms of like you have to check out these games. I think the most important or impressive leap forward for the PlayStation 5 generation is the SSDs and the load times. Going back to playing like God of War Ascension, you really feel the load times, especially because for the first time I'm not playing on PC like I normally do,
Mm-hmm.
and so I'm playing on original hardware, and I'm really feeling like, wow, you have to sit here if you fuck up. And I forgot about that when I was, when I was younger, but it's a weird reality to go back to. But that being said, that brings us to the actual last part of this conversation.
Hey, this is Nick from the future, along with Sri and special guest Austin, because we were sitting here after our conversation about, PlayStation going all digital and all the bad news that's been happening recently. We were going to be talking about the impending layoff situation with Xbox, but that news has broken today. We were here recording Retrograde, which is our retrospective podcast, which you should absolutely go and check out as well. But we thought, hey, we're all together. Why don't we just talk about what actually happened versus talking about what was proposed to happen and then being behind in the news? I think you understand it. So to get into the actual breaking of the news, today Asha Sharma shared a email that was sent out to all Xbox employees. It's a very lengthy email, obviously, going into this stuff.
I was going to say, do you want to go fly through this thing to establish what we're going with, or how do you want to do this, Nick?
I think I was going to plan on reading up to the point where she specifically talks about the studios and what's happening. We can maybe pick at it a bit more,
Sure.
but at least to get to that point. So the email starts off with, Team, we are beginning the most significant restructure in Xbox history. After careful consideration, I've made the difficult decision to reduce our team by approximately 3,200 throughout fiscal year 27. This will include approximately 1,600 role eliminations today, and in addition, 4 studios will leave Xbox to new management. I recognize that a year-long restructuring creates additional challenges. Unfortunately, it is not possible to make all the necessary changes in a single day, and I wanted to be direct about the scale. I know this is painful. These changes will directly affect people who have poured their creativity into building Xbox. Many joined us through acquisitions, while others were recruited here or sought us out because they loved this industry and loved Xbox. Today's decisions do not reflect their talent or dedication. Our business today is not healthy. We are operating at margins that are 3 to 10 times lower than comparable platform and publishing businesses. We entered Gen 9 with a smaller install base and higher cost structure. To grow, we bet on Game Pass, multi-platform, and a broader portfolio of content. While those businesses have created meaningful value, they did not grow at the pace we expected. As that happened, our core business weakened and we added more teams, more investment, and more time, hoping for a better outcome. And now the industry is facing the most severe hardware crisis in its history. We must reset Xbox. First, we will reset our content portfolio. Since 2018, we have aggressively expanded our studio portfolio, while the number of games created each month across the industry now outpaces the last 10 years combined. We now find ourselves competing not only with the largest publishers, but also with smaller independent studios. It is neither possible nor desirable to own every great independent studio. We have also learned that we are not the best home for every type of studio. In a typical year, we lost 64 cents for every dollar we invested. As we reset Xbox, we will help independent creators succeed by providing open development tools and audiences to realize their vision. Now, here's the part where we get some concrete stuff about the studios. Uh,
Yep.
Compulsion Games and Double Fine Productions will return to management and transition to independent studios with their IP catalog and runway for their next games. Ninja Theory and Undead Labs have entered terms to join new ownership with funding to complete and grow Senua and State of Decay 3. In France, Arcane's management is beginning required consultation work with its Works Council to review potential strategic options. So that was a lot right at the start here. But outside of all the rumors and speculation, and this person says this, teams on the chopping block, this person says this one, this is kind of where the studios themselves are ending up that we're in discussions for specific shakeups here with Xbox, included with massive layoffs from all other parts of the company. So
it was estimated to be about a fifth of the company or something like that.
I believe so.
I think I saw that somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
they have like a 12,000 employees or something like that at this point.
So off rip, what are we thinking about that unfortunate news?
So, I mean, I can't tell you how many times. I mean, at this point, it's been countless times with Xbox, especially doing exactly these like shitty things and just closing studios that they recently just paid millions of, not like close to billions of dollars in total to acquire.
Billions in a lot
That's
of
what I'm
these cases. Yeah.
And like a lot of these people are like game studios that have high quality games, or like even in some cases game of the year contenders, and then we get nothing from them or get one game that Xbox uses, and then they just fucking toss them to the trash because it's like, oh, didn't do what we thought you were gonna do, so goodbye. So I will say, at least to be a little bit of a skeptic and on a little bit of the brighter side, nothing, 100% closed. People lost their jobs, which is terrible.
Mm-hmm.
But these studios that are making games, they still have their games, and they can still go and finish whatever they're working on, and hopefully find success in doing that, and then just be able to be self-sufficient enough to keep open and keep people happy and excited for whatever's to come next, instead of just crushing probably thousands, if not millions, of gamers' hopes and dreams of a reboot or a continuation, a sequel, like especially in Psychonauts, right? Like, they just made 2, and 2 was actually pretty well received, so why wouldn't we want to see a third one, or something in that universe, or just something by Double Fine in general, or Compulsion? I mean, I have seen so many things about Blade at this point where it's just like when does this dude catch a break? He can't get a movie or a game made.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just very sad. It's sad, but the blow has been cushioned enough, and I do not feel for Asha Sharma in this situation, because she inherited a bad hand, and she's just kind of trying to get it to the point where she can then put her stamp and make it feel like it's going to be better. Because right now a lot of bad's happening in the industry, a lot, and right now there's nobody that's being a clear-cut winner of the next generation, because PlayStation is completely torpedoing themselves, and Xbox is cutting themselves down to hopefully grow into something better. But it's sad. It's sad nonetheless. Xbox seemingly gave hope, like when they acquired studios, and did nothing with it. They have no exclusives. They have nothing in this generation that was worthwhile, and all it's done was bad after all the acquisitions. So I applaud that, we don't see studios closing here, but it's still sad that it ultimately was all for nothing. And I hope nothing but the best for all of these studios going forward. And I hope whatever the situation is with the French government, that Arcane gets it figured out, because they don't deserve anything bad to happen.
Sri, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, this is, you know, Nick. Obviously, a brunt of this episode has been us talking about the PlayStation debacle,
Mm.
and we are now, as of when we're recording this segment, not the rest of the conversation. It's been 5 days since PlayStation has tweeted anything, which is, I think, the longest break that they've ever had. So I think it goes to show like this is sort of an explosive time in this industry, and there's really no right move to make. I also think it's important to kind of, first of all, before I even get to the rest of my thoughts, uh, none of these corporations have you in mind, the person
Exactly.
listening. They, if, by and large, no matter where we're looking, right? Like, it's not about, oh, what's Nick doing and or what's Austin want. It's if those are the cases, Austin would have been on his third playthrough of Fable on his Xbox Series X, but no, he doesn't have that. So what
um, I will say it's a bad look when Nintendo seems like the one focused on their customers right now. When Nintendo Notorious is like, yeah, fuck it, Mario Kart's $80. Remember when that was the biggest
well
problem in the gaming industry?
and
When they
and
were like,
to
go ahead.
Nintendo's credit, I do think like they're possibly the only one that has good news, which is that like Nintendo just increased the salaries of their employees this week or in the last 7 days. So when everything else is happening, Nintendo's the only one that seems to have some sort of a save face ability. But that being said, yeah, this is so many shitty things going on, and I think this is sort of, I hate to say best case scenario, and I think it's best case scenario because of so many other shitty things that have happened before it. I mean, again, as
Agreed.
Asha says, getting losing 64 cents per every dollar that you're spending is a huge fucking loss. And also part of that is that there's a lot of these studios that were gobbled up by like an Xbox during the pandemic time when like interest rates were all like at an all-time low and like people were incentivized to spend money because you needed the economy needed the boost, and it was just like a whole series of things, right? So that has all led to Xbox investing in things, and then pretty much being like, "Hey, we're going to be hands free, and you can manage your system, your console or sorry your game however you'd like, and you're just under the Xbox kind of umbrella." And I think that this is a step away from that. This is really like sort of treating it how I think Nintendo or Sony treats their studios, which is a little bit more direct reporting of kind of going forward. I mean, I think that's kind of the goal that Ash is kind of wanting to seemingly push toward. There's some absolutely ridiculously like metrics thrown in there as well. Obviously, we didn't get to it, but in kind of what Nick was saying. But at the end of the email, Asha says, I want Xbox to be one of the few companies that entertains more than 1 billion people each day and gives everyone the opportunity to create and connect. I know we can achieve this goal. Xbox has many of the most beloved franchises in entertainment history, talented studios around the world, and we will return to growth in 2027. 1 billion people each day is a crazy number, especially considering the fact that Xbox reaches 1 billion people per year as of right now. And also, as per recent reports, Xbox, per actually Wall Street Journal, Xbox Game Pass currently has around 30 million subscribers. So again, I'm throwing a lot of numbers out there at people, but the idea is that this is a pretty far-fetched goal, at least as of now. I think this is the goal for like maybe 2030. I think is what she was saying, that she kind of wants to hit this goal. But like, it's just these lofty goals that muddle the rest of the conversation. Like, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I digress.
I think you're not accounting for everything being an Xbox, not by
That's
you
true.
know,
That's true.
everyone who watches a TV, that's an Xbox.
That's
Yeah,
fair. That's fair.
reading this today, I, we spoke on Discord very briefly earlier today, and I was like, I think that while it's a shitty situation, they kind of threaded like a needle the best way they could have, a very precarious needle. And reading what I just read about, the studios retaining their IP, they're spinning off and going indie or finding other partners. I'm wondering how much that last real bad round went when they closed like Tango Gameworks and Arcane Austin and they closed all these studios. I'm wondering how much of that bad publicity and bad faith they really internalized from that, because I know it was definitely a thing for me. I'm a little bit biased because Hi-Fi Rush was one of my favorite games of like the last decade, and so when they turned around, closed them, and said we need smaller games that win us awards, and that was literally what Hi-Fi Rush was, and they just canceled it. Like, I'm wondering how much of the fan backlash and stuff, they were like, okay, going into this, we know we have to break this news. We can't let it go down like last time. If that even was like a consideration going into this, or if they were just like, we have the opportunity now to soften this as much as we can. Let's try it at least.
I mean, I would say that I don't think anything that they've done was with the consumer in mind, especially because like even just outside of this, taking another step back into Xbox news, the Xbox Series X just went up in price again.
Mm-hmm.
So to where an Xbox Series X now, what is it, like $850, $900?
Yeah, it's hard to keep track
It's like,
anymore.
but like I didn't think buying this thing back when I did it was gonna be performing like a stock, you know? Um, it's I have no faith in these companies anymore that they're even remotely trying to give the consumer a good, I'm not gonna say a good experience, but they're not gonna do things like with your intention, like with you in mind at all. And like especially Xbox, they have the backing of Microsoft, so they essentially have infinite amounts of money. So I don't care that like they lost so much money. Like that's their fault. You had talent, you just didn't know how to manage it.
Mm-hmm.
And they could have made so many great games if they just were able to effectively manage these companies. Or if they really did just want to like say, "Hey, we're just going to provide you with a little bit of funding and some advertising, but you guys go out there and make the games that you guys want to make." And guess what? If they would have done that, I am super fucking confident they would have been very successful, because there is so many indie games, or even games like a Hi-Fi Rush, where it really came out of nowhere and became beloved by so many people, that would have come from that kind of treatment. If that's what they truly cared about, they cared about the gamer. That's what would have happened, and we would have gotten a lot of average games, some bad games, but then some fantastic games. And like we're living in a world, especially like with like Expedition 33, that like games can be great and it can be something that people don't expect to be good. So
Mm-hmm.
like if you just let them take chances and don't worry about like, oh well, that's not live service and like we won't make money off of that, or like, oh, that's not like big shooter, like that's not going to make money. We're like, no, 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 you have to do the things that'll make money. um then you'll find that people don't want the same shit over and over again, and that we want to be challenged in a way that we haven't been challenged before, or get something that maybe scratches an itch that hasn't scratched like in our gaming minds in 20 years. So
Which
like
I
it's just bad. It's very bad. I feel now, especially of all time, beyond frustrated and hopeless, and there's just nothing we can do. There's no amount of like, oh, boycott this or boycott that, that's gonna change any decision or anything like that. No amount of signatures is gonna change anything that's been announced or anything, and it's so infuriating. Like, just point period. It's
Yeah,
just that.
I think like Xbox, they were on the path for that, right? With the original idea of having the smaller studios kind of do the creative, interesting projects that would fill out Game Pass, make that a more interesting prospect to people. But
I mean,
now
you even go
with
back to the 360 era, they had it to where people can upload their games essentially onto like the Xbox store, or had at least some sort of pathway to that. Like that's why you got
Mhm.
like a lot of like goofy stuff like a Doritos Crash Course
Right.
and like small like like $5 indie games that if you wanted it, cool. If you didn't want it, someone out there did, you know?
But with the trimming of these studios today and the culling of the workforce and everything, there's I don't it's not in Sharma's email, I don't think, but Schreier was out with Bloomberg today saying that a lot of the Bethesda studios are going to be focusing on their biggest tentpole stuff, that being
Yeah.
Fallout, Elder Scrolls, Doom, Wolfenstein, and Quake. Kind of interesting that Quake is thrown in there.
Yeah.
But the read that I kind of was getting today, just thinking about all this stuff, was like, okay, think about where Sony's at with their kind of first party output. They don't really do indie or double A stuff anymore. It might be something passing as double A, right? Or they might have a third party, agreement for something like that. But like the Santa Monica's, the Asobi's, the Naughty Dogs, they're kind of like triple A, big budget stuff. And I feel like that's kind of what they want the Xbox studios to go for. Like, we want your Gears, your Fable, your Forza, we want Elder Scrolls, we want Fallout. Like, that is what the money and the focus is going to be going towards. So that way, when you get a new Xbox Game Studios, game, that it's not just some, middle of the road kind of vibe that I think a lot of people were having towards things like Compulsion Games or like Double Fine when they see a Kiln or a South of Midnight. It was a whole big thing about, the recent Xbox showcase where when it would be Bethesda Presents, people would just be like, because it was Fallout 76 or Elder Scrolls Online. It's like, I feel like, again, obviously these decisions weren't made with this in mind, but I feel like that's kind of been a pervasive thing about Xbox for the last couple years. And what they realistically want is a Xbox Game Studios presents and people get excited. Kind of like when, in a Sony State of Play, when you get the PlayStation Studios logo and people are like, oh, first party, like, here we go, this is going to be something big. I feel like that's what they want to try to get Xbox to the point of. I just don't know if cutting all of the interesting small projects out of that was the cost that I would have went with to achieve that.
I 100% agree because the trade-off with that, and it's what we're seeing now with PlayStation, is there's long gaps that these studios don't really put stuff out. Naughty Dog didn't release a single game in the PS5 era. They only
Mm-hmm.
did remasters or reboot whatever of Last of Us. So, like, you get that big first-party studio, and they haven't done shit in a whole generation. And I mean, granted, we don't know what's happening with Intergalactic, whatever. Um, but like that's the trade-off. And so do I want to go to a console and this is kind of my thought of like when PlayStation said that they're going to be removing discs as of January 2028, right?
Mm-hmm.
I felt like this was going to be Xbox's chance. This is where they can dunk on them just like PlayStation dunked on them with the Xbox One stuff. That where they can be like, "Oh yeah, this is how you'll share games on whatever Project Helix ends up being." And then they hand somebody a game, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they could have dunked on them. But or like even like on the flip side, you'd be like, oh well, do you want to wait 5 years for another first party studio game, or do you just want something that like is like super small that's like only on Xbox that you can thoroughly enjoy and just have one of like these games every 8 to 14 months, you
Mm-hmm.
know, um, and then that at least gives you a little bit of something that while you're waiting for a Gears, while you're waiting for a Fable, while you're waiting for whatever, because especially in this generation, I really didn't feel like there was a game that was like one way or the other that like I was like, oh yeah, you have to buy just for that.
Mm-hmm.
Like I really like Ghost of Tsushima and Ghost of Yotei and stuff like that. But like if I only had one, like, or if I could go back and do it, I probably wouldn't get a console with like all of the knowledge I have now, because it's just like even though I'm a console player, everything on PC is just as good, and there's a larger catalog. And now that I have the information that I have, I mean, I'm much more comfortable shopping on Steam than I will be on PlayStation Store or on Xbox's store.
Right.
And so I just both of them have done nothing except disappoint and make me sad as a consumer of both and a fan of both.
Right.
I think that the Xbox idea, what Xbox really had and should have cherished, their entire kind of s- crux of success in a way was sort of muddled by Game Pass because I think this goes to the fact that Phil Spencer really went all in on Xbox Game Pass, but when you look at the 360, right? Xbox Live Arcade started companies like in terms of it gave indie games. I think Braid, right, was one of them. Like it gave them the foundation to launch, and like some of these cult classic indie games at the start of when indie development was really just like not that popular or common. Xbox Live Arcade gave them a platform for success, and Game Pass essentially comes in, and you'd think it's a natural extension of what kind of Xbox Live and Live Arcade did, but it really kind of lost the whole point of what this ecosystem would be, and ultimately what that led to, I think, is that you know a majority of what we're seeing right now is Call of Duty's fault. And I know, look, I love Call of Duty, but at the same time, I can easily point a finger at Call of Duty whenever I know that it's at fault. And I do think that a lot of the layoffs, the 1,600 now, like literally today, as we're recording this, in 1,600 over the next 12 months, that's a response primarily, I think, to the fact that Call of Duty Black Ops 7 bombed. Because, and no, I'm not saying bombed as in like this is not a Call of Duty game, and how it should have performed by
When was the
metric.
last time you saw a Call of Duty game go on sale for $15 like 2 months after release?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think it was just like that's the thing. Like, there's been so much. Let's drive the potential of Game Pass, and we have all these acquisitions, but the thing is, and I think what the PlayStation and Nintendo, what they've gotten correct, and I think in the next 12 months, I hope that we see Xbox kind of in this course correction period do, is essentially, hey, those big tentpole games are like the console sellers, not like Call of Duty. I'm saying, I think games like Call of Duty are better when they're cross-platform, not really loyal to one side or another. I know that for a long time that they've had PlayStation loyalties, going for like 10 years back or whatever, but prior to the acquisition, of course. But I mean, most of the things that sell consoles that give people the confidence of a release is, like regular big AAA games that PlayStation and Nintendo have sort of down to, even if, not to like a really good pace, which is what like this whole generation's argument has been, is that there's been not a lot of first party exclusives on either side. I think Xbox just doesn't really quite understand that. And while you do have something like Keeper, which is an incredible gem, and I'm glad that Xbox Game Pass gives games like that an opportunity to succeed. Like Kiln isn't going to do that. You know what I mean? Like Kiln isn't going to be a console seller. People aren't going to clamor to the streets. I need to spend $1,000 on an Xbox Series X so I can play Kiln right now. And it's just those don't line up. And so I'm glad that like Compulsion and Undead are able to get some sort of a freedom from Xbox, because I just don't think that they're really home in that way. Like they're not like home at Xbox. You know what I mean? And so all said and done, I think this is quote unquote best case scenario as you can get best case scenario out of this. Out of thousands of people being let go. But again, like I said, there's no real winning in this situation. And while it does seem like the best case scenario for us, it's still not like it doesn't undo a lot of the things that have been, the mistakes that have been made already, right? And
Right.
there's been course corrections that have been fixed, like Hi-Fi Rush Studio getting shut down, Tango GameWorks getting shut down, and then getting bought up. Like that's still Xbox shut them down. It's just happened to be that there was someone else willing to pick up the pieces, and Xbox did, to their credit, sell off the studio instead of being like, no, this is mine.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think this speaks like what's happened, what we're seeing now with Xbox more so than any other like publisher or anything, is just poor management across multiple levels for years that have been banking on a thing that just did not come to fruition.
Hmm.
You know,
And I mean, that's the other key takeaway from the email. We don't have to get into it, because I feel like we've kind of said what we've had to say on it. But like
yes,
Sharma
I
even
agree.
highlights that some decisions would have to go through as many as 14 layers of management to be
Yeah,
made, and it's just like, if there's one thing that the next generation needs to change, it's how the projects are managed and how the budgets are managed and all that sort of stuff on the unconsumer facing part of the business. That's what
I
needs
mean,
the radical change.
and you know what's even crazier? All of those people, right, signed off on whatever decisions, and we still get games that are releasing unfinished, and still getting games that are just not ready,
Mm.
or getting games that are like getting pushed back. Like you would think all of those people with all of those eyes and all of those like decisions that need to be made.
it's not. It's not. I don't think it's quite that because like think about that. Like I think in video game development, when it comes to like hierarchy like this, it's sort of like that game Whisper Down the Line. Like it's not as much like, oh, there's so many people listening, so that it's got to be
Oh,
accurate. It's like,
it's
oh,
definitely
it's
both.
really losing the kind of the impact by the time you get to the 12th person. They're like, what, kiln? Yeah, it's a game. There's a fire in it or something. I don't really know. Like I'd be hard pressed to find an Xbox executive that can really tell me the spirit of kiln from uh, uh, Double Fine.
Hmm.
I
But
mean,
I
I
digress.
definitely think it's both, to where it's like too many people, fucking things up, and then also all these people are partly responsible for greenlighting shit that's not good to go. Um, so yeah, I agree with that as well. That it's just people don't care at a certain point, or it's just too many people that care, and it fucks things up. Because what was it with Redfall? To where I was like, the people that were working on it, they're actively like, this isn't what we want to do, and then they're getting pushed to do something that they don't want to do, and then they get pissed off because it's not the game that they wanted to make.
Hmm.
You know?
Yeah, and you know, as we kind of wind down, the story is still developing. It's not like this is just the one band-aid pull. We had some independent reports coming out throughout the day, and people, posting about, hey, I've, been let go. It seems like, at least from the people that I follow on here, which is more like Bethesda leaning, seems like a good amount of Bethesda talent got lost today. Juice said, who's, somebody in the Bethesda community, said he didn't have like exact numbers, but it seemed like a decent chunk of people that worked on Fallout 76 were let go. So it's like even their current service projects are going to be taking a hit. Elder Scrolls Online, it seems like their team got hit again, which is just a raw deal after getting the Project Blackbird, I think Blackbird,
I think it's Blackbird.
after they got that canceled. So it's just, again,
Also,
our,
around 25% of Obsidian has also been cut off.
oh, I didn't even see that. So yeah,
Yep.
crappy news. Obviously, if we didn't make it clear enough already, obviously our hearts go out to everybody that's been affected by that. Hopefully, there's still a place for people, and that they don't just up and leave the industry, which is unfortunately a common thing that happens also after being burned so many times by layoffs like this.
Yeah. This, yeah, as Nick said, this is a tough position to be in. Uh, obviously, like it's one shitty position to be in for the 1,600 people that have been let go today. It's also just another shitty position for the other 1,600 who know that at some point that they in the next year that
Yeah, the
they
shoe's gonna
have to
fall.
have cut,
Yeah.
but they still have to work like nothing's wrong and the roof isn't on fire, right? So it's just an ongoing story and ongoing development, but there's just going to be so much shit that we're going to the repercussions of this we're going to see for a while. But I think that if we're trying to stay to whatever degree positive we can, that there's a path that I think that Asha Sharma and the leadership at Xbox now are sort of building towards, which is and it makes sense, and kind of reading the emails and seeing all the kind of inside reports and stuff. It's that obviously they're divesting some of their smaller studios that they can get rid of. We've gone over that. But then also you have the like Minecraft, the big powerhouse, which I think is I think she kind of mentions that there's now like Minecraft will directly report to her. It's not like there's no like as many layers below her, which sort of adds to like Minecraft being another big live service push. I don't think we'll see Minecraft 2, but probably sort of Fortnite style user generated levels and like I think there's a market there that would be interesting to access. And then as Nick had said at the start, 5 very weird franchises for them to say, hey, this is what we're going to focus on. But with the success of Fallout, it would make sense that you have a Wolfenstein, I think TV show is kind of part of the conversation here.
Mm-hmm.
So a game like a Wolfenstein 3 coming out alongside a Wolfenstein TV show would be very interesting. Also with Amazon Prime and stuff like that. You can see kind of where these things would land eventually. It's just I hope that this isn't just this is really just one fast Band-Aid pull and not a just phase 1 of the Band-Aid removal process.
Mm-hmm.
But that's all I had to say. Nick, you can transition out of that however you'd like.
Yeah, so no clue how exactly I'm gonna slot this into the episode, but in the event that this is the end here, thank you for watching. Like we said, please check out Retrograde, RespawnStation.com, streams that these lovely folks are doing. Please check all of that stuff out. And with all that said, on a somber note, but no less important, have a good night, a good morning, and again, oh God, have a good night, a good morning, and a damn good time.
That was almost so good, Nick. That was almost so good.